Hey y'all! Well, welcome to my little workshop here where I'm doing a subjective review about this little T20 Aiyima preamp. And this is the kind of sister component to their A20 amp that I just reviewed that I liked. And they sent one of these for me to listen to with that amp and with other stuff. And first of all, I just want to say this up front. If you think adding something like this in the signal path is going to make your little Class D A20 or whatever amplifier sound like a $5,000 300B amp, yeah, that's not going to happen. And you can tell that by looking at the THD numbers this thing puts out, which is like 0.003, and you're not going to hear 0.003 of any kind of distortion, good or bad. And most like full tube preamps, like I build one, a lot of other people do, you're going to see at least 1% of THD, and then you're hoping that it's going to be second order harmonic distortion to get tube sound. And this, while it sounds fine, is not tube sound. And I did do some short-term listening, rolling some different tubes in it, and I will give them credit for using these 9-pin 12x7 style tubes. And I think there's some others. You'll have to look at their website that can be put in. Modern production tubes are made in this type. You don't have to go find some weird new old stock tubes that are those old 7-pin type to use in it. But again, I didn't hear like a big changing the tubes like I do when you have a full analog tube amp that has no feedback. You know, it's real simple, just tubes output. This isn't that. And again, not saying that that's a bad thing, just don't expect some huge changes. And I did see a couple of reviews where people were waxing poetic about, you know, they tried a dozen different of these high-end, you know, black plate Mullards and all this stuff. And between me and you, I really question that somebody that's buying a $130 preamp, or I think it was maybe $180 retail, that they would go out and buy $1,200 worth of premium new old stock tubes to try in it. The other thing that really threw up a red flag for me was when I put into ChatGTP, or AI, whatever you want to call it, and asked, like, describe what different 12AX7 tubes sound like, I basically got the text that was used in their article. So, more than likely, a lot of what you're seeing on forums and stuff are people just parroting what they saw either somebody else say or that they got out of an AI-generated review. And so, I just want to be honest there. And it is a good thing to me, though, because it means that these tubes that it comes with, you don't need to rush out and go buy even like a $60 pair of some other tubes to make it sound good. It just doesn't sound that different. So, anyway, let's go into the unboxing. I'm going to show you what the inside looks like, and then we'll wrap it up at the end of the video with another commentary. Okay, so let's get to doing the unboxing part of this. Here's the 10th anniversary of the little T20 preamp. And when you open it up, you get instruction manual here, like that. You get a warranty card that is in English this time. That's interesting. The earlier ones, you remember I used to sling them across the room because I couldn't read a word on them. Here is the product information or technical support lines stuff if you have problems. And here's just a little preview of their products they're selling. And here's the box. This was originally in a bag. This isn't the first opening I've done of this, but I haven't looked at any of this stuff. So here's the little preamp. It's well packaged. Looks like this. Here is the volume information And then this is our volume control. And I'll look to the instructions. I've read like this is the power, and I think it also switches between XLR and RCA, and it does come with a remote. And this is probably one of the things that would make me recommend it to folks. If you are looking for a remote control for your volume, this little box will do it. So, comes with a 12 volt DC power supply. They're claiming it can do 2 amps and 24 watts. That seems, yeah, 24 watts out of this little guy. It seems kind of ambitious, but this preamp shouldn't need anywhere near that, and I'm sure this is plenty to power this guy up. And then we have our tubes here, and what I'm impressed with is that it's using 9-pin tubes. Most of these little amps end up using those little tiny 7-pin tubes, and here we go. These are fairly low-end OEM PS vane tubes. These are not something that I would use in like one of my amplifiers, but they probably sound decent in this little box, given that I highly doubt that a lot of the signal is being amplified or run through these. Given the super low distortion they have is not something that a tube amp is actually capable of. And so they're probably not going to hurt anything. I would be really shocked that the tubes make some huge difference in the sound. Again, given the low distortion compared to like other tube preamps that are, tube only, that all the gain and all the, cathode following and all that is done with tubes. This is probably more of a buffer, and these are 12AX7 tubes, which are very common, which I have a bunch of. Later, I will do some tube rolling in this thing to see what impact changing the tubes actually does. But again, looking at the measurements that Amir and some other folks have gotten off this thing, where the distortion is like negative 75 dBs, I just can't imagine they have a huge impact on the sound. But hey, they're going to look cool, right? So again, I've listened to amplifiers that have this level of PS vane tubes in them that are like full tube amplifiers, and wasn't impressed. And might be interesting to put these tubes in something like my EL34 amp that uses these as the driver tube and see what these tubes actually sound like. But that's not happening today. So that's the unboxing. Let me show you what the little guy looks like powered up. So I do want to comment on these tube sockets and then the tubes that this comes with. As you can see, these tube pins aren't the straightest that I've ever seen. You can see a couple of them are kind of bent out of the box. And then this tube socket, the top of these pins has no like funnel to center the tube in the socket. And so it's really difficult to get the tubes to go in these sockets correctly, because as you see, you have to go directly in the center of that little socket. There's no like bevel or top funnel kind of thing to help the tube guide into the hole, and it's real easy for the tube to get jammed in to the side of one of these tube socket pins if you get rough with it. So just take your time, be careful, and make sure you don't booger up the tube socket by trying to shove the tube in or get frustrated with installing them. Okay, so we got the tubes installed, and like most tube things, looks pretty cool. Tubes stick out of the top like that. Let's see what it looks like when it's powered on, because part of the deal with tube amps is the aesthetics of what tube amps look like when they're powered on and the tubes are glowing. So here's what the amp looks like when it's powered on, and there are the volume control numbers. And just personally, I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't really need to see a number that the volume is, and it has this kind of digital look that doesn't fit to me, with the analog theme of the tubes, and I also feel like that to get it to blend more with the amp, they probably should have had these more of an orange color that would be more subdued in a dark room. That kind of really bluish white is in stark contrast to what you would see with tube heaters. And so, yeah, I'm not sure I'm a super big fan of that. But anyway, that is what this thing looks like when it's powered on. So the other indicator you have over here is this little blue dot. It turns orange when you push it for a second, and it goes back to blue. And I'm assuming that that must have some reflection of which input ports it's connecting to. Okay, so here's what the inside of this preamp looks like. And unlike most of the amplifiers where you pull off the volume control and take the nut off and they are loaded from the rear, this is a front-loaded one. These are attached to the front plate, and when you take the screws off for these stands, yeah, you can slide this out the front, but then you got this cable and you can't even see the inside of it. So to open this thing up, you take all the screws off that are in the back on all these jacks, except for this one over here in this corner. That holds the back plate to the case, and then you just slide the back off of the amplifier with the case. And it does have 3 op amps here that are changeable. I'm pretty sure that a couple of these are doing the lifting of converting the single-ended to XLR, which probably don't have a huge impact on the sound. Haven't played around with this yet. I have a feeling that probably this one, but I'm not sure yet until I do some op amp swapping. This may be the one that's in the audio signal path that would be more audible. But again, I feel like that if you're going to put some money in op amps, put them in the actual amplifier and not in the preamp. So anyway, that's what the inside looks like. Here are little tube sockets that are sitting up on stands like that, so they're sitting up high. And actually looks like these tube sockets have a little plug on them, so they unplug from the board, which I guess is used for if one of these sockets gets damaged, you can potentially get a new socket from Aiyima through their, service department and take these 2 screws out and they just plug in and unplug, which makes them a little more serviceable if those parts are available. And they don't really explain what these op amps are doing or how much impact they have. And if you're buying $50 replacement op amps, that's $150 versus $50 if these other 2 don't have a big impact on the sound. And there may be another review out there or information on the net that explains which one of these have more sonic impact than the other. If you buy one of these and we want to upgrade some stuff, I recommend you do a little more research than I've done to understand what those op amps are doing. But anyway, I just wanted to show you all what the inside of this guy looks like. Okay, so let's quickly go over what the remote control does. Hit the power button, got a mute, we've got a illumination control which turns off those numbers on the front, which I previously said I'm not real crazy about. And here's volume up, volume down, and that switches between the 2 inputs, RCA or XLR. So as you can see, got the volume up, volume down. This turns off the light if you don't like that. And then here's our mute button, which those 2 lines there tell you you're on mute. And then there's the off. Now when you turn it on, it has a 20-second countdown timer, which you can see counting. And then once it gets down to 0, you'll hear a click for relay, and that tells you that the amp is ready to go. And there we go. And that's what the remote does. Well, we're going to wrap up this video here with like what I think the use case for this is. And would I go out and buy one for myself? And for me, if I was using the little A20 and upgraded the op amp in it and, was digging what that kind of sounded like in whatever system I was using, would I go out and add one of these for a change in what the system sounds like? And honestly, I wouldn't. The main thing that this brings to the table to me is, first of all, it does look cool. And there's probably some psychoacoustic stuff going on with having visible vacuum tubes that are in your system. And, I think there's people that would enjoy at least the idea that they're listening to tubes. And most of the people that would be buying something like this have probably never owned or heard something like a, $5,000 level 300B amp that has $1,000 300B tubes in it and that sort of thing to compare it to. And this is not that. But this does sound nice, and it's transparent, and I don't think that it's harming the signal in an audible way, especially if you're using it with the components that would normally be used with this. I mean, again, I don't think people that have $30,000 speakers are going to be driving them with a $200 Class D amp. Just most of the time, stuff kind of goes along with itself. And as you get more revealing speakers, I think you will hear the difference between, a $200 amplifier and a $2,000 or a $3,000 amplifier. So, again, what would I use this for? Remote control volume. That's like really nice for folks that want one. Me personally, I almost never change the volume when I'm listening. I know where on the knob that I normally set it for the sound pressure level that I enjoy listening at, and I'm not changing it. But I also don't use my sound system for like background music in my main system. If you do, you want to change the volume to get it like to a more conversational level, or a good song comes on, you want to turn it up, this could be very handy. It's also got a way to switch the inputs from RCA to XLR. So you could use it for a source switcher. It does have the ability to turn off the light, which is nice if you don't like the way that looks. It's also got a mute button, which can be handy. Phone rings or something, or somebody comes to the door and you want to mute the thing without having to get up and walk over the amp. But I will say, even at 66 years old, I'm not that lazy yet. I don't mind getting up and turning a knob or pushing a button if I need to. And so, like, even on my personal gear, I don't even have a source switcher. I have cables that I switch from one to the other to keep a switch out of the signal path. And at the end of the day, my mantra has always been, and it's not going to change, that the less stuff in the signal path, the less problems you're going to end up having. And having something that's got multiple op amps and other chips and a digital volume control and then a couple of tubes and, all of that. And if you don't need it, I don't really see the point in going out and spending this money. And so, not saying this is a bad product at all. I'm just questioning its usefulness in most systems. Now, if you have something like those Fozzy monoblocks that have no volume control on it, and you want to drive them with XLR inputs and stay all XLR from your DAC to your mono amps that don't have volume controls on it, yeah, this makes sense. And that may end up being what I end up using this for, is in that kind of situation, to be able to use those mono amps to control their volume. And again, got the remote. So anyway, that's kind of my subjective, review and opinion of this little guy. And it's just that. This is my opinion. If you want to see the objective testing, Amir at ASR on Audio Science Review, he did a complete write-up on this with all the synads and frequency and all, everything. And so if that's the kind of stuff you dig, go look at that. Again, not saying this is a bad product by any means. I'm just questioning, would I put it in my system? And if I've got a way to control the volume already, I don't think I would be using this. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Thanks to all you Patreon supporters. Thanks to Aiyima for sending me this stuff to review. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of different than my normal content, which is DIY vacuum tube amp building and going over that kind of stuff. But yes, let's get a little break into something different. So I know some people get upset when I do these reviews, but hey, it's just going to be part of the channel, so get used to it. So anyway, until the next video, have a nice day.